All right, what's going on, guys? I'm excited to be back on YouTube. As much content as I do on social media, on my social media platforms, I enjoy YouTube the most because YouTube gives me the opportunity to dive deep and, just give all my thoughts and really cover all boxes. On social media, on Instagram, Twitter, these videos, they're 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes long. You can't always touch on every little thing, and you kind of got to be fast. With YouTube, I can lay it out there a little bit more, and I can have these in-depth videos. And YouTube was the first platform that I was on, so it's always nice making YouTube videos, and I plan on making a lot more. For those of you guys who watch, I hope you enjoy. I'm going to take it all the way back, as you can see in the thumbnail, and I'm going to talk about this Chris Paul situation. The Golden State Warriors, the four-time champions, they acquire Chris Paul, giving up their biggest young asset, their best young asset in Jordan Poole. They also give up a few other pieces, Patrick Baldwin Jr., Ryan Rollins, I believe the second. If it's the third, correct me. But I think it's Ryan Rollins the second, Patrick Baldwin Jr., Jordan Poole in exchange for Chris Paul. Washington was clearly just trying to get rid of Chris Paul. The Warriors were clearly trying to get off of that Jordan Poole contract. And because Chris Paul is an expiring contract, the Warriors at the end of this season pretty much will have some money to work with and can potentially find themselves having the opportunity to have the mid-level exception back again if Klay Thompson takes a deal that's kind of team friendly the way that Draymond's deal was. Draymond Green took an extremely friendly team deal. I mean, for all the things that Draymond does that hurt the team and go against the team and him making it all about himself, he did an amazing job, and you have to give him kudos for putting winning first and taking less money to ensure that the team has an opportunity to compete in the future. Draymond's shown that the most important thing to him is always winning. Sometimes he gets caught up in all these other antics, but at the end of the day, the Warriors aren't the Warriors without Draymond Green. I mean, Draymond Green, he was a cancer, and him and Jordan Poole, they were the reasons for the road woes. But as you saw in the postseason, whether it was a couple games, that game 2 against the Boston Celtics last year in the NBA Finals, or the game 3 last year in the first round against Nikola Jokic and Denver in that first round. It could even be, I believe it was game 5 against the Sacramento Kings last playoffs, where he was incredible. He had about like a 20-10 game, just being very aggressive. Like when Draymond comes out the gate and he's looking to be aggressive and he's looking to push the limits with the referees in a playoff setting where the referees already want to try to avoid being a part of the final outcome as much as possible, and then Draymond pushes and he goes after that, and he really presses the line. It makes it extremely tough for other teams, and because he has championship pedigree and he's playing on the same team as Steph Curry, he can get away with even more. So Draymond's very shrewd in that way. I mean, he was great against the Lakers in Game 2 and in Game 5. I felt like he was extremely impactful. But getting back to Chris Paul, they had to do this trade because Jordan Poole and Draymond Green, there was just obvious chemistry issues. Of course, the punch, and also just the general split in the locker room with the age gap between the two units. You had the old heads and the young heads, and the old heads played a certain style of basketball and they've won playing that way, so they're not going to conform at all. So you have to just fit in with what they have going on. And the young guys, in practice, I'm sure they're balling out, and when they get into the game, sometimes they have their moments. Even in blowout games, sometimes they get in there in a blowout loss or in a blowout win, and they show that they have game. In summer league, they'll show that they have game. But in the regular season, and especially in the postseason, Steve Kerr didn't trust Jordan Poole to be out there. Steve Kerr went with Moses Moody, who he didn't even play most of the season. He ended up going with Moses Moody in the final moments of Game 4, which was the biggest game of the Warriors season, that Game 4 at Los Angeles that ultimately led to them being down 3-1 and effectively ending their season because they just weren't going to be able to come back from 3-1. So anytime people have been talking Warriors with me this summer, I just keep going back to that game and saying, look, the Warriors had 4 guys out there that they trusted. They had Steph, Klay, Draymond, and Wiggins. The 5th guy was supposed to be Poole, But when it mattered most, the coach didn't feel like he could trust him. The players on the court didn't feel like they could trust him. So he had to go to a player who's essentially a rookie when it comes to this type of scenario in Moses Moody. And it just was you kind of were playing 4-on-5 because you just weren't going to win that game when Lonnie Walker's balling out. Meanwhile, your fifth guy in the biggest moment of the year is a guy you don't even trust. So you weren't going to win that game, but now your fifth guy, whether he's just spotting up in the corner or he's setting up plays for Steph and Clay, or it's just another guy with high IQ out there on the basketball court, Chris Paul is going to be that fifth guy now, and he's just so smart and his basketball IQ is so high, and he's been doing this for so long that, throwing him into the mix, that's a huge upgrade over whatever you were getting from that fifth guy, whether it was Looney, Jordan Poole, or Moses Moody. Now that fifth guy being Chris Paul, you've just elevated your team's basketball IQ by so much. You've just taken down their turnovers by a high amount. Jordan Poole is one of the leaders in turnovers. Chris Paul is one of the best at limiting turnovers. Chris Paul is one of the best at making sure we get a good shot down the court. Jordan Poole's he's one of the worst, and I like Jordan Poole, but he's one of the worst when it comes to making sure we get a good shot. Sometimes he's just going to take a lot of bad shots, but he's just so talented, he's going to make some. But overall, you don't really feel that comfortable with him as a decision maker in postseason style basketball. So with Chris Paul, Dario Saric, and Corey Joseph, the Dubs got older and wiser this offseason. Their record last season was 44-38. A big part of why they struggled so much was because they were 11-30 on the road. Like I said, a lot of that's chemistry and age gap, and also some of it is just championship hangover, like a team that wins the Super Bowl or the team that loses in the Super Bowl the next year, they just come out kind of sluggish. Some of it is that too. I think some of it was these guys just feeling like, well, when it matters most, we'll just beat the teams we're supposed to beat. But they just weren't good enough to have that on-off switch. I felt like Bob Myers and Steve Kerr, they kept going on interviews, especially locally if you live in the Bay Area, whether it was with 95.7 The Game, shout out Bonte and Chasky, and shout out Steiny and Guru, because I feel like these interviews were with Steiny and Guru where Bob would get up there and he would say, we just don't have the same margin of error that we used to have. And I always thought that was interesting because basically what he's trying to say is when they had Kevin Durant, they had so much margin of error. Every guy on the team could have somewhat of a down game, and they still were going to win because they were just that much better than the other team. But nowadays, the Warriors, they're pretty even talent-wise with the rest of the league. Sometimes they even have less talent than other teams. Sometimes it feels like Steph Curry's just out there by himself, depending on the matchups. So because of that, there's just a lot less room for error. The margin for error is a lot smaller, right? So because of that, they have to be smarter with the basketball, and that's what Saric and Corey Joe and CP3, that's what they do. And the new general manager Mike Dunleavy has shown he will comply with what Kerr and the Big Three wants, which is a win now opportunity. And with their win total sitting at 48.5, I'm just going to call it now. I mean, barring major injuries, this is a 50-win team because not only did they improve their roster, they increased the morale of their star players, especially Clay and Draymond, and it will show in their focus level this season. Klay Thompson is on record that he came into last season out of shape because he's been getting injured so much that last offseason, he just wanted to give his body a break. Now that I think he's confident and feels confident not only in his shot but feels confident in his body, he knows that he's at least close to being the player that he used to be. Last season, as much as Klay struggled in the postseason, in the regular season, Klay was awesome. He had stretches where he carried the team. He averaged over 20 points. He shot over 40% from three. That's all you can really ask for from a shooting guard at Klay Thompson's age. I mean, that's high-level production. Even if you don't think that he's going to be able to really go off in the postseason when teams are locking in and keeping a body on him, at least he's proving that he can be an innings eater during the regular season. And when Steph Curry's gone or sitting out a game or something, Klay Thompson can still carry the offensive load. So that's good to see. And with Draymond Green, you can just tell that Draymond Green is like rejuvenated. He's happy that Jordan Poole's gone. There's just a new energy to Draymond Green. And I'm not going to be surprised with how emotional Draymond is as a player. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he just turns it up and just has an incredible year now that Jordan Poole's gone, and he just uses this season. It just feels like this season for the big three as well as Chris Paul is kind of like a redeem year. Like it's like a redeem team kind of year for all these guys where they're like coming together with this guy who was their rival for all these years, and they're like, hey, we need to bounce back and you need to bounce back. We're going to get together and we respect you as a competitor and we know what you can do. And you, of course, you know what we can do because they beat him so much that now we're going to team up and we're going to get the job done. So, the only teams out west with a higher win total than the Dubs are Denver and the Suns. So I feel pretty confident. That would put them at third in the West. Of course, Ja Morant is missing a bunch of games to start the year. I actually could see Memphis playing pretty good in those games just because they usually play good without Ja. Now, Tyus Jones is gone, but I think Marcus Smart will do a good job of carrying that load. They have a good coach, so I don't think Memphis is going to be just horrible just because Ja is out, but I feel comfortable in saying that the Warriors, with the win total showing that they're the third best team in the West, I feel comfortable in saying that the Warriors will probably be a top 4 seed out West and will have over 50 wins, at least 50 wins, and they will host a team in the first round. They will host a playoff series in the first round instead of having to go at Sacramento like they did last year. This year, it might be them hosting Sacramento having to come to the Bay. That wouldn't surprise me at all. In like a 3-6 matchup, the Warriors hosting the Kings. The Kings are due for some regression, but that's a story for another day. They're not going to win as many road games as they won last year, and they haven't shown to be an incredible home team. As much as exciting as it gets with lighting the beam, they haven't been that great of a home team. So I don't know. Sacramento's going to be an interesting team to watch. There's a couple of teams at that level of Sacramento, like the Mavericks, like the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's going to be pretty interesting to see how those teams play out. But the Golden State Warriors, over 48.5 wins is a play that I really like. Of course, we're a far ways away from the NBA season, so as the NBA season gets closer, just remember that I said that because I'm probably going to come back around with a video where I confirm it and I lock that play in. And lastly, before I go, guys, I just wanted to chime in real quick on the James Harden, Harden-Morey situation. I just wanted to give 2 cents on it. I understand both perspectives, and I kind of understand what the media is saying as a whole, where, look, it's all about player empowerment right now and giving these guys the opportunity to make the most money possible and kind of control their future in a way. Is it necessarily good business? No, not quite, but that's just kind of the way that things are going nowadays, and it doesn't seem like they're going to be able, and when I say they, I mean owners, it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to really slow this train down too much. But James Harden was essentially, as you guys know, he was essentially given, a word is bond kind of deal where it was like handshaking on that, hey, you're going to take less money and we'll be able to sign PJ Tucker, who's going to, grind for us and help us win some games. And in return, we're going to ball out this year and, we'll give you the money next season. And, Daryl Morey should be a man of his word and he should pay Harden. And I actually think, to Harden's credit, I think he earned the money because, look, he balled out against the Celtics in I believe Game 1 and Game 4. I mean, I had him. I bet the Sixers in that Game 1 where he covered, and not only covered, but he won at Boston as a big road dog. I believe they were 10-point dogs in that game. So, he balled out. He had 40-point games. He had game winners. I actually thought the reason why the Celtics won that series was because Embiid fell short like he normally does. It's so disappointing watching Embiid every postseason. And I'm not saying it's all his fault. Sometimes it's just the injuries and he can't control it. But it just really sucks watching the Sixers and they're balling out in the regular season. And you're like, oh, okay, this team's kind of on the level of the Bucks or the Celtics. And then in the postseason, you just know inevitably, like, Embiid's going to get hurt. And it's never, not going to be the case. If there was going to be a time where Embiid didn't get hurt and it was just, their lucky season, it was going to be this year. And, he was missing games this postseason. So, it just kind of sucks. Side note on Embiid, if Harden does end up gone or he does end up sitting out games, this could be a narrative where Embiid is able to win a second MVP and tie Jokic and kind of even the scoreboard up with Jokic. Because I could see Jokic in Denver kind of, I wouldn't say falling back or coasting throughout the regular season, but the same way that he kind of let the MVP go towards the end of last season, I could see him from the jump just not even coming close to competing for the MVP, just kind of letting it go, and voters just having voter fatigue. And then they'll open it up for Embiid to potentially get a second one, or Giannis to get a third, or Luka to get his first one, or Tatum to get his first one. But um, you know, switching gears, not just from Harden's side, but from Morey's side. Morey made a promise and he needs to keep it, but Morey's job is to produce the best team possible. And he's looking at this roster and saying, well, if we just run it back, are we going to do anything other than what we just did this season? And the answer is no. And because the answer is no, it brings me to my point my point in all this. And my point in all this is as simple as this: when these guys had their agreement that, hey, you're going to take a pay cut and we'll pay PJ Tucker and then we're going to pay you on the back end, Harden can say, Morey's my guy, I believed him. And Morey can say, yeah, when I told Harden that, I really meant it. In the back of both of those guys' minds, they knew if we don't beat Boston, there's going to be a problem. And James Harden knew when Embiid was playing like shit against the Boston Celtics, he knew this might impact my chances of getting paid. And Harden was horrible in Game 6. Harden was scared to play basketball in Game 6. And I want to say in Game 3, he was playing really, really bad also, if my memory serves me correct. But yeah, he was scared in a couple of those games. But he balled out enough that as a second option, he did his part. But Embiid just played bad, and Morey's looking at it and saying, hey, I can't just run it back. It's just a waste of everybody's time. And Harden, as much as Morey is his guy, Harden knew in the back of his mind, hey, if things don't go the way that they need to go, this might be an issue for me in the future. And it just feels like a relationship where both parties are just ignoring red flags. And then when the red flags pop up and are a big deal, both sides are acting like, whoa, oh my God. Bro, you guys kind of knew that the Celtics or Bucks were most likely going to beat you. And then when that happens, you guys are going to be looking at each other like, well, what do we do now about the money? And now, because these things actually happen, you guys are pointing the finger at each other. I mean, to me, you point the finger at Embiid because Embiid just was super flat. But, in the context of this feud between the two of them, I thought it was shrewd that Harden did his whole anti-Morey thing in China. Harden is a very smart basketball player as far as his business is concerned. So it's just pretty interesting, and I'm interested to see how it plays out. Who knows how this is going to go? Harden is pretty cool with all the guys on the Sixers roster, so is he really going to leave them out to dry the same way that he started leaving out the guys on the Brooklyn Nets? Because his issue with the Brooklyn Nets was more so with the front office and management and Kyrie Irving, who other people have an issue with as well. But, as far as with the Sixers, it's just amongst the players, it seems like he's good to go and he's cool with the players. I mean, shoot, they're at the Michael Rubin white party having a blast. They had their whole starting five. They had guys on their bench at that party. So I don't know. I'm interested to see how it plays out with Harden and Daryl Morey. I've been watching Harden since his high school days. I don't know if there's an NBA player who I've followed closely or known about longer, from a younger age of his than James Harden. So I'm interested to see how it plays out. And ultimately, I do think that Harden probably is going to end up playing for the Sixers this season for at least a portion of the season before getting shipped away. But anyway, thank you guys as always for listening. Make sure to comment and subscribe. Share the videos. Until next time, peace.